Welcome and thank you for watching. I'm Gabriella Leone, Archives Manager at the Staten Island Museum, and I'm joined today by Debbie Ann Page, Public Historian and Co-President of the Staten Island Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. We're excited to tell you about the Access, Collaboration, and Equity in Genealogy Initiative, which we call ACEGen for short. It's a project that brings together our organizations along with Frederick Douglass Memorial Park, and we'll tell you a little bit more about each of our organizations in the next few minutes. So the Staten Island Museum was founded in 1881, and we're celebrating our 140th anniversary this year. And the Staten Island Museum engages visitors with interdisciplinary exhibits, public programs, and educational activities for all ages. It is the mission of the Staten Island Museum to spark curiosity and generate meaningful shared experiences through natural science, art, and history to deepen our understanding of our environment, ourselves, and each other. Our vision is to make institutional decisions informed by diversity, equity, and inclusion values, reflect the diversity of Staten Island's community as represented by our board staff and volunteers, and provide a museum environment and program that is truly welcoming and inclusive of all people.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Staten Island Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. We are a chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society National. We are the Richard B. Dickinson chapter, and we're a 501c3 membership organization that's open to the public. We have regular meetings that are held on the third Saturday of each month, except in July and August when we're on vacation. And usually our meetings are held at the Staten Island Museum. Our chapter provides a monthly forum for people who are just beginning their research in their African American, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-European diaspora family histories, as well as those who have already gathered information going back many, many generations. Geographically, our members are not solely focused on Staten Island's African American genealogy and or history. In fact, they have research interests that span the African diaspora. And so I wanted to talk to you as well about the history of Frederick Douglass, how we've come to get these records. Frederick Douglass Memorial Park is an African American cemetery in Staten Island. It was founded in June of 1935 in response to the practice of racial segregation in cemeteries and is still an active cemetery today. It opened as a 53-acre ultra-modern cemetery controlled by African American funeral directors from Harlem during the Great Migration. The cemetery became a final resting place for artists of the Harlem Renaissance, African American nurses who worked at Seaview Hospital while doctors sought a cure for tuberculosis, and they were known as the Black Angels, and it became a regular resting place for the African American community of New York City.
So as I mentioned, Staten Island Museum, the Staten Island chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, and Frederick Douglass Memorial Park are partnering on a project called ACEGen, the Access, Collaboration, and Equity in Genealogy Initiative. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. So by access, or to achieve access as we've defined it, we'll be digitizing archival collections relevant to genealogical and historical research, specifically about Staten Island and the greater New York City area, and making those collections accessible to the public online. And for the parts of the collection that are handwritten, we'll be going the extra step to transcribe those records to make them even more easily searchable, readable, and accessible to the people who will consult them. In terms of collaboration, we will work cooperatively with other organizations to identify, preserve, and share relevant collections with the public. And we've begun that with this incredible collaborative work we've been doing between these three organizations so far. And in terms of equity, the focus on the project will be on collections representing communities that have been underrepresented in the historical record, beginning with the African American community on Staten Island, and in particular with this set of burial records from Frederick Douglass Memorial Park. So to digitize the collections in the scope of this project, we are using a tabletop scribe system from Internet Archive. This is a picture of some of our project team scanning Frederick Douglass Memorial Park's records at the Staten Island Museum. And some of the records, like the city and business directories from Staten Island Museum's collection, go directly, well, all of the collections we scan go directly onto Internet Archive, where they're available now on archive.org. You can search Staten Island Museum or Frederick Douglass Memorial Park and view the records in their entirety, and they're updated as we scan more throughout the project. Some records that are published, printed already, are immediately searchable, and so they're on Internet Archive and ready to go. As I mentioned, the handwritten records need a little extra help to be searchable and readable in the way that we hope they can be. And so that's where you come in. So this is a screenshot from the page, which is the transcription software we'll be using, and we hope you'll be using to help us transcribe these records and make them as accessible as they can be. So if you would like to join the project, the first step is to sign up for a free account on From the Page. And once you do that, by going to fromthepage.com, you'll be able to search all of the transcription projects available on the software. And there are projects from repositories all over the United States and all over the world. And one of those repositories is the Staten Island Museum. So if you search Staten Island Museum, you'll find our project page, and you will be able to see the collections we have been talking about that are available for you to transcribe: Frederick Douglass Memorial Park's burial records and Staten Island Museum's directories collection. Once you choose a set of records, you'll be brought to this transcription page. As you can see, there's a picture of the work that you can zoom into and out of, and a field below that for you to type in the transcript as you read it. If you run into trouble, or before you begin to learn the conventions or guidelines of the project, you can view the transcription conventions beneath each of those fields in each page that you begin transcribing. Consult these guidelines for information about how we're standardizing spelling and grammar, what we're preserving from the original documents, and how we're making slight changes to make them more readable and searchable. If you still have questions, or if you've begun transcribing and have comments or notes, you can enter those in a field at the bottom of each page called Notes and Questions, which the transcription team will be able to read and respond to. Or you can contact the transcription team using that link at the bottom that says questions, contact us, and we hope you will. So there are 3 types of records that are currently available for transcription through ACEGen. The first are Frederick Douglass Memorial Park's permanent record books. They are a chronological listing of burials at the cemetery. They're organized in spreadsheet form, and we're going to be transcribing them from the original spreadsheet to an identical spreadsheet template that we have created on From the Page. The next are Frederick Douglass Memorial Park's ledger books. These are handwritten entries that are also by date, but they're the day-to-day accounting of the business office of Frederick Douglass Memorial Park. And we'll be taking those daily entries and transcribing them to a spreadsheet that standardizes all of the fields available and makes it a little more easily readable and searchable. And the last set of records is a census index from the Staten Island Museum's directories collection that catalogs African-American families listed in the census between 1840 and 1875. And And these records we are transcribing pretty much as is, so that we'll be able to search by name and for the other data that they contain.
So, Richard B. Dickinson was the first African American borough historian in Staten Island. And in 1981, he published a book called The Census Occupations of Afro American Families on Staten Island, 1840 to 1875. And over the course of his research, he compiled this card catalog with the information from the 1855, 1860, 1865, 1870, 1875 censuses about state and federal censuses about families here on Staten Island. So I want to start by giving us a few helpful hints as we looked to transcribe the records. First, I would say look for familiar letters on the page that seem more clear. Compare and match unknown letters, characters, or doubtful words with letters that you recognize. Compare the words on the same page. Look at pages before and after the ones in question so that you may find a word that's written or a letter that's written more clearly so that you can go back and understand. Again, look backwards and forwards in the record for similar words and letters. There may be different handwriting in the records, so you'll begin that process all over again with comparing and contrasting and matching the known letters and characters, and it's kind of a cyclical process. I want to tell you, be patient with yourself in this process. Analyze your document before you begin reading the handwriting for the descriptions. Read it out loud. Sometimes it helps it to make sense to you. If you're tired or frustrated, take a break. Don't assume anything. Read each letter slowly, intentionally, and don't attempt to transcribe too far or too fast. Don't rush to get the transcription done. This is a transcribathon, not a marathon. Take your time and enjoy the process. Some of the times, and I'll just as an aside, sometimes while you're taking your time going through the process, reading it slowly, talking out loud to yourself to hear what's going on, you can formulate a narrative in the process of this.
It's funny, Debbie, one of the transcription team who was working on some of these cards the other day for examples for the upcoming project kickoff, noticed that on a card such as this, it was listed that, the head of household, a man lived with his wife and his children, and they were both older. They were over 60 or 65 in, I think it was the 1860 census. And the children were of almost adult ages, right? They're late teens, maybe early 20s. And in the next state census 5 years later, the man was listed living alone. And the team member was transcribing them, and she said, "Oh," and I said, "Oh, what happened?" And she said, "Well, I think this man's wife might have died and his children might have moved out, and he had this whole household 5 years ago and now he lives alone." And she was immediately connected to him and empathetic and empathetic towards him. And that's the kind of connections and understanding that you develop through these transcription projects and through interacting with these records. And I think as people who interact with them often, we still haven't lost that wonder. But this project is a really important way or an exciting way for us to be able to share that or create that experience for other people.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure. So should we go to the From the Page website, Debbie?
Yeah, I think that will be helpful so that they can, maybe we can click through and they can see what the actual page looks like and experience it in real time.
So this is the interface from the page. At this point, right, you'll have signed up for a free account, and then you'll be able to search all of the projects available on the platform. And at this point, you'll have found, right, the Staten Island Museum's page and clicked into the Dickinson census indices, and you'll know who he is because Debbie just introduced Richard B. Dickinson to you, right, and his important work. And as you can see, there are different sets of records within his collection. And I'll just click into this example, and you can see these are all done, but throughout the collection, there are still many, many more cards for you to transcribe. And we can click in and see you can zoom in and out as you need on the original document. And then view the finished transcription, or on the transcribe tab, you can edit that transcription as needed throughout the collection. And then another set of transcribers will come back in and review your work, and then it'll be approved as the final version. But it's always editable, and any little bit, any page that you transcribe is a major contribution to the work. So I think with that, I will go back to this slide and just thank you in advance for your time and for your contributions to this project. I'm excited to hear you share those moments that you have as you go through the collection and encounter these people from the past. Maybe a lost ancestor, someone you didn't know, or someone from the community that you have encountered and who and connected with in a new way. And thank you so much for joining our project. And Debbie, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I just want to say thank you and happy transcribing. Yay!
Thank you.